So wonderful to be back. I've had few visits to Cello Bello, and it's wonderful to be back. And also, it's great to see all the streams that Cello Bello has been doing during the quarantine. It's wonderful. Keep us all uplifted, all musicians and cellists around the world. So I'm here today, hoping you have some questions for me. If there's anything left to ask. And have my cello even, if you have some cello questions, doesn't have to be only about cello. And my wife Julia is right here looking at the YouTube and Facebook if you have any questions to ask. Maybe before we start getting questions, I wanted to speak a little bit about the online cello academy that I'm doing. During the quarantine I was really in a need to see my students because we did everything online, I'm sure as everybody else, but after I got used to the Zoom and to this kind of communication, I realized that it actually opens a lot of doors to communicate and to engage with cellists from all over the world that normally would not be able to see me or work together. And we did in May 8 days of hardcore cello academy online, and we had 10 active participants and 15 inactive participants that we were all there every day. And this was not just in the form of a masterclass, this was really going into details, stepping on the wounds, I would say. And it has been amazing to see the progress of those kids through the 8 days, and to realize that actually Zoom and the internet can help us cellists and musicians in general to get together and to be enriched by each other. So I'm holding another academy in August. The details are in my website. And what's another thing that's unique about the academy is the fact that we do a scale session every day for 1 hour where both active and inactive participants are getting together with me on Zoom, and we play together the scale systems that I use and a lot of patterns, and it gives a chance for the inactive participants to play as well. And it was really nice to see that everybody were there every day and had so many questions, and mainly to see that the 10 students that applied and I mean that were accepted and played every day got so much better. So it gave me a boost of good energy to see that in this difficult situation there is a way to come out and to actually get better as musicians and as cellists, and to connect with people that normally would have been much harder to do. So do we have any questions?
We have a question. Can you explain how your tailpiece works differently than a traditional one?
Oh, yes, so you see I have here the Fritz tailpiece. I have actually two cellos. This is a Thomas Dodd, and I also have a Viom. And I have two different kind of tailpieces. This is a Fritz, and I have the Kenesu on the Viom. And both tailpieces are their job is really to make the cello sound like the cello and not to stop the sound. This tailpiece I like, especially on the Dodd. The Dodd has a very dark, sort of hot, dark chocolate sound, and this tailpiece really brings out much more vibration from the cello. And when I play with orchestras, when I used to play with orchestras pre-corona time, I found that on this cello with this tailpiece and with these strings, which are perpetual, it really gives the cello a boost, and people usually think that I still play on the Casals cello when I play on this, so it's a good sign. That's the main thing. And the design of it is really to be as light as possible and with as less material as possible, and also to have the C string with the least tension from all strings, so it can really vibrate even when you play the other strings, so it gives a roundness of sound to the A string as well, especially when you play high on the A string.
Why do some cellos have no identification tag inside?
Some cellos, well, some instruments, were made so many years ago, and if it's not one of the 10 famous Stradivariuses that we all know, or the Goffrillers, or the Amatis, and so on, many times we just don't know what cello it is, and you need an expert. It's like sometimes you see a painting by a great painter, but it doesn't have a signature, but still there are experts who can tell you what it is. So even if there is identification inside the cello, that doesn't mean anything when you buy or sell an instrument. The certificate should be done by somebody preferably alive, and maybe multiple people, and the whole art of finding out if the instrument is really what it is not just by an identification. So if you buy a cello and it says Stradivarius inside, and you think you have a Stradivarius, you're probably wrong. It needs much more than just an identification sign inside an instrument. However, some instruments do have the original, like this Dodd from 1800 has the original. I know it's original because, again, multiple people like Beers in London and Philip Cass here in America, there are a few of them that we know and are alive, and if they give you the authenticity for it, you can probably count on it as close to 100% as one can.
What kind of strings are you currently playing? And how often do you change your mind about strings?
Oh, that's a good question. So I play normally on perpetual on this cello, but I've been using different strings on the viom, trying different kinds of strings. But on this cello, on the Dodd, which is my main cello, it was Greenhouse's instrument. I use a perpetual, and I've been working with them for many years now, and they even made a special A string for me. So it's really cool where I can write an email to the head of the production in perpetual, perpetual, and ask him for what I want, what I'm looking for, and then a few weeks later I get the string back here and I can try it and we can have a sort of a dialogue. I also like the versum a lot, and that's what I'm using on the viom, and I find that it works for it better. Right now, being at home, I kind of switch between them, but I do play on the Dodd now much more, and that's sort of my traveling instrument, so I guess I'm missing concerts, so I started playing this much more. So I highly recommend the perpetuals. They're very easy to play, and again, it has to fit with the instrument and the player, but the versum are also amazing strings and very warm. So, when I play the viom, it needs warmth, help with the warmth, I guess, and when I play the Dodd needs a brightness to come out from it, so I use different kind of strings.
Any suggestions on how to work on swoopy bows or inconsistent or too fast bow speed? Also, I enjoyed the Cello Online Academy as an auditor. I learned so much in such a short time.
Wonderful. Thank you. So for bow changes and the whole bow technique, I think there's a big misconception. First of all, I need a great bow. Of course you do. The bow is important. The bow makes a sound. But what we need is to find a way to make the bow an extension of our body. And I find that a lot of cellists forget the end of our hand, or the fingers, and the use of the fingers. And many cellists, when you see them play, they play with what I call a frozen hand. And then it's very hard to change the bows, it's very hard to cross strings. So I normally have 3 exercises that I ask my students to do, and those exercises help to activate the fingers. And I call the fingers of the bow arm the cello tongue, because this is how you really speak with the cello. So what we do is first we just learn to pump the bow up and down, and then we go sideways, and I'll explain each one of them. And then with the pinky and the thumb, we go up and down. So if you think about it, if you put the bow on the string, the up and down will take care mostly of the string crossing. And the sideways will take care of the down and up bow, the angle of the bow. And then the pumping will take care of the down and up bow. So if you are able to activate those 3 sort of rules of bow technique, you are able to move much more with your fingers, and you are able, while doing that, to activate the sound. So when you make a bow change, everything starts and ends with the fingers, and not this frozen feeling. So a lot of the time I tell my students, on a down bow, because you have so much weight, I actually increase the speed at the end to get lively sound. I increase, and then I have a motion that allows me to switch the bow within a motion. However, when I go on an up bow and I have to change here, and I call it like an elephant trying to dance like a ballerina, because you have so much weight coming in, that's where I have to stop the motion and use the fingers by holding the weights. So I can change the bow by holding it and not by releasing it. A lot of cellists, what they do, they just go really fast on the up bow, going to down bow, and you create this hiccup in the sound. So in general, not to go too much into details, is the activation of the fingers, and then the realization that if you want sound to be beautiful on a down bow, I will increase the speed of the bow, so I can get beautiful sound at the tip, but then I can also change the bow within motion. And then when I go from an up bow to down bow, I will decrease the amount of speed and hold the weight, so it doesn't become really heavy, and then it jerk off the bow and it gets this hiccup sound.
What advice do you have for students auditioning for conservatory?
Advice for students auditioning to conservatory. Well, I think by that time, if you decide to audition to conservatory, you want to become a performer. And that's really an important decision, because many people do many things, and they're very talented in many subjects, and they finish high school, they're not sure what to do, and they say, well, I'll just keep doing both. So my recommendation is to be really set in your mind if you really want to do it, because it's going to be tough, it's going to be hard, not just the practicing hours, but fighting for your place. So when you go to a conservatory, even if you do double degree, which I highly recommend if you're able to, your mind should be set that this is what I want to do. Sometimes I see kids coming into conservatory and say, well, let's give it a year or two and see if I can do it. I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, you need to be completely set when you're 17, 18, really wanting to do it, because it's going to take a lot. Now, depending which conservatory and depending which teacher and how much the teacher will demand from you. But I like to treat all the students in my studio at Peabody as people who are about to become performers. That's what they want to do. And therefore, I demand from them a lot. And because I demand a lot, they need to do a lot. And if you do a lot, it's going to take a lot of your time, energy, and mental state. I mean, it's going to take you, there will be a lot of ups and downs. So that's the number one. Set your mind to that goal of becoming a performer. That doesn't mean in orchestra or chamber music, or it's becoming the best you can, you and the instrument. Number two is in the audition, try to be yourself. Don't try to just play in tune and just play with nice sound and keep the beat, which are really crucial and important and non-negotiable. But if we have 10 minutes with you, 15 minutes with you, we need to get a vibe of who you are as a person. And you have to understand that we, the people that sit in the other side, the scary side of the table, and auditioning more than 100 people every year, we want to make sure that you as a person, we want to have you in our family. And that's something that we try with experience to detect in 15 minutes, and then hopefully maybe have a lesson before or after to help us make that decision. But I always want to make sure that I would like to add you to my family. Even if it's a cello family, it's going to be very intense and a lot of back and forth. So I want to make sure that you as a person is somebody that I want to work with, and it's interesting to work with for 4 years or 2 years or whatever the degree you're doing. So when you enter the room, be yourself. We might not like it, but don't try to imitate, because that's a vibe that I at least don't like to hear in playing music, and also to see in person's behavior. So be yourself, realize that everything in the audition that you do counts. The way you walk, the way you sit, the way you tune, the way you establish eye contact with us, If we ask, normally we ask a question or two, the way you answer the questions, just be yourself, be a human, be hopefully a good human being, and then we see that there's something to work with. And that's really the most important, at least for me. Besides, of course, the talent and the ability on the instrument, needless to say.
Have you managed to practice safely in small groups during our quarantine? Will chamber music concerts with limited and well-spaced audience members be possible in the months ahead?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it will be possible. I hope it will be. Certainly there is a difference I see between Europe and the US. In the US we're a little bit slow in picking up back normality as far as concerts. In Europe, I know from my colleagues that concerts are coming back, of course with social distancing, in the audience, on the stage. I have to be honest, it looks and sounds even a little bit weird to me to see those concerts where musicians are so spread out. It's like having a very intimate conversation with somebody, not allowing to be close to him, but then having to whisper still, because this is not music that you just shout. So everybody is far away from each other, and yet they feel good because they're on stage. But it's not really, at least to me, how music making should be. So I'm hopeful that it will come back to what it was, or even more so, I'm hopeful that we, the musicians, will realize that the situation is different and will do something else with our life, with music, which means we will go and play maybe in different places. We'll stop this kind of dream or hope that next year I'll play in Carnegie Hall. No, you can play in a school in your community and it will be fine. So playing for kids, playing for your community, playing in your neighborhood, playing most of the live streams I've been doing in my garage. I've set it up in a way and I like the acoustics there. So if I can play also with a pianist eventually, or even with my trio, with Ilya Kaller and Alon Golston, we're playing in Chautauqua this summer. So we will have a trio concert, hopefully. Even if we don't need the audience, we do need the intimacy on stage. I feel that this is just sort of forcing ourselves on the music by sitting so far and playing. So I'm hopeful it will come back. Nobody knows right now if it will. But in the meantime, I will recommend also for students. I've asked my students at least to send me videos of them playing outside in their neighborhoods, and send me photos of them playing outside of all people's homes. So there are many possibilities. Music can be played in many places that we forgot that exist, and we forgot that are the essence of music. Next week I'm playing for a hospital here in Baltimore, and the ability to play via Zoom, yes, but to play for hundreds of patients and to play for them for an hour is something that I wouldn't even think about pre-corona time. So there are a lot of possibilities that we can explore as musicians, and I would recommend for the younger generation, and not just anybody who is making a living from music, to find those opportunities close by to home. You can always stream them, but give the music to your community. It's right there and it's allowed. You can play outside, you can play for people in smaller groups, but you can play. So I would highly recommend to do that and to be creative with it, not to wait that everything will come back to what it used to be, and then to hope that again we'll go to that fight to get the concerts and to play and to travel. I would just try to express music where we are now.
Do you believe that older beginners, 56 years of age, can develop a decent cello tone, or is it too late and they need to accept the weaker tone they currently have as a beginner?
I don't think it's never too late. It's never too late. Yes, to play a musical instrument is sort of like a language. So it's very, very, very hard to learn a language when you're 56. It's almost impossible, yes. But you can, and I've heard people who are making beautiful sound. You're not going to be able probably to recite Shakespeare on the cello, which means to play maybe Dvořák concerto when you start at 56, but you can play so many beautiful things and you can enjoy the sound of the cello. What we need to remember, and I talked a little bit about it with the bow, is that our job, I think, as cellists is not to disturb the instrument. to really realize what's the sound that the instrument has and to bring it out. So by not disturbing the instrument, I mean finding a way not to have these tensions that we usually do have approaching something that freaks us out. So to be freaked out but not to show it with tension, then the instrument can give you so much beauty, even if you're 56. So just drawing a C string, you don't need to be young, amazing cellist in order to enjoy the beauty of a low, open C string on the cello. This is something anybody can do by knowing how to hold the bow and be relaxed and free and use the weight and the movement rather than the pressure. And if you can do that, that's a great start. All you need is to put your fingers, the left hand, on some notes, and you already have a bass line in a Haydn string quartet. So you're almost set to go, at least with a very enjoyable, beautiful, gorgeous chamber music pieces that you can play mostly on the C and G string just by not pressing the cello. And I find a lot of amateur players who start late, they don't understand the concept of not disturbing the instrument. They think that if you have to make sound, you have to push it. And I mean, we all do, but we might, if we're younger, we might have better ability to hide it. When you're old, it sounds really scratchy if you're not aware of how to do it. So what you need to do is to understand that the stick, the bow, is an extension of your hand, and to ask yourself, you know, how many times in my life, in my daily life, I press my hand like this and try to do something gentle. Hardly never. I mean, you have to be really upset at somebody to do this for a prolonged time and do something to either an object or a person. I wouldn't do it to the bow. So the bow doesn't need that kind of pressure. It takes time to get used to it, but once you do, the cello will give you a ringing tone and a beautiful sound.
How to make the opening chords in Dvorak sound as good as a single note?
Well, the opening chords in Dvorak, so there are a few layers here. First of all, there's a melody there. The melody is something that I feel a lot of cellists neglect. That's the top of the chord, the group of chords. That melody goes with a clarinet that plays so many cellists I work with, and they play the Dvorak, and I call it karate chords. They play the chord and they never ever think of the top note, or needless to say, vibrate the top note. But if we hear that note, we have a dialogue, a musical dialogue with the clarinet, and that's really important. So when you play the chord, first of all, the first thing I would recommend is to put, let's say, 70% attention in your motion of the hand to the A string. You can do it 4 times on each one. And then the B. Now, if you can also vibrate it, that will be great. So you know what to listen for. Then comes the subject of the motion. I remember studying with Boris Pergamenchikov, and in the Elgar, he told me, don't do 2 speeds on each chord. Because apparently I did. So when you do those 2 motions, you're killing, by the time you get to the second motion, you're killing the bottom, the first motion, and you kill the sound. So he worked with me a lot on to do 1 motion, even if you have 4 notes. So when you play a chord, try to treat it as 1 motion. It's like a good pilot landing with an airplane on the string, learning through motion, but not like a helicopter. So when you play the chord, you have to work on that motion, 1 speed motion. And then I would recommend to put your bow on the string and hold it with the left hand, and then to put the right hand and to activate your elbow, what I call the chicken wing motion. Many cellists have a frozen elbow, and thus they're playing a straight line bow, and it's very hard to make a round sound like this. So just like going to the gym. Before you start practicing, you can activate the fingers with the 3 exercises I showed before, and you can activate also your elbow. And you can do those circular motions in clockwise and opposite of the clock, just to be able to activate the elbows. So I call my elbow, or our elbows, the creator of sound. Of course, you don't have to move it up and down like this, but it has to move sort of like a smiling face movement. And if you have that smiling face drawing with your elbow, when you play, you can create less or more roundness to the sound, depending on how much you want. But that's an extremely important motion for cello, but also for life. You know, when you take something from the table, you bring it here. You take your iPhone. There's always circular motion in the elbow. It's not this robotic motion. So we have to imitate it when we play. Even more so when we play a chord. If you play without the elbow, it's very stiff. But if you play in a circular motion, now, not only that we have to activate the elbow in the bow arm, we have to be sensitive with the left side of our body to the motion of the bow. So if I just do this motion with my right hand, and I am sensitive to the feeling on my left side, I feel that the left side of my butt, the sitting bones, and my arm, my elbow, left elbow, they're moving a little bit, tiny bit, unless I'm stiff. But if I'm not stiff, they're moving a little bit. So when I play the chord and I draw the bow in this direction, my left elbow should react to it and not stay here. So many cellists I see playing with this stiffness. Now, if you take the bow and you treat it as a pole, like when you go to the gym and you do these exercises, the motion is the same. A down bow is like taking a pole here, and an up bow is this. I mean, you can't argue this motion. You can resist it with not doing it with your left side. But if you are aware of human posture and human motion without the cello, you will have to activate your left side as well. Also in the beginning, not this, which so many cellists do. And then for the chord, so melody, motion, one speed, and then reaction of the body to the elbow motion.
Any advice on how to improve intonation in high positions on the A and D strings, especially with extensions?
Yeah, how to improve intonation on some position. Well, the easiest way to say is practice, 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 scales, scales, yes. But I think there's a way to do it that might work better for all of us. It's something that I've been thinking about for so many years. That's why my exercise book, the first hour, is basically based on patterns. It's a very simple patterns that you can do in first position, but I ask you to do all over the cello. So I just had this session with my students actually yesterday about it, and how to improve intonation here and here by dividing the cello into 3 different cellos. So you have cello number 1, which is from the open string to the harmonic, or A string is. That's cello number 1. That's the cello that we're most comfortable with. I can guarantee whoever asks the question and other cellists, if I ask you to play C going to G, in, let's call it cello 1, it'll be no problem. However, if I ask you to play it in what I call cello 2, which is from your thumb harmonic to the 3rd finger, that's cello 2. Okay, cello 1, cello 2, cello 3, now between cello 3, cello 2 and cello 1, we do the same things. So just imagine that you would spend 90% of the time, which probably most people do in cello 1 every day, you will spend in cello 2, and maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, but still in cello 3. So what I mean is that if you will start spending more time here doing simple stuff, you will start playing much more in tune here and be much more comfortable. I'll give you some examples. If you take a piece that is preferably in F clef, so in bass clef, because our brain is trained to look at F clef and to put the finger where it is. Like you see low E, you put the third finger. No? Probably. You see F on the second line from the top, you put the second finger on D string. Yeah? So what if you would train your brain to do the same thing but in cello 2? So you see the same F, but you'll put second finger on D string and you will do it an octave higher. So what you do, you tune your cello like you tune it every day. This is tuning cello A. And then normally we start to play a scale. And we do it, there are many ways to do it, we do the exercises, and then we get here and we come back. What if you tune your cello a different way? You ignore cello A. You tune your cello from cello B, from cello 2. And you start your scale. You do C major very slow. But instead of open string, it will be thumb. Instead of fourth finger, it will be 3. And you do it really slow. Play here and you get used to it. Then you will take simple melodies, like there's a Dot's Hour book, and if you take the first book, it has many melodies that are all in bass clef and they get up to fourth position. It's a great exercise for us to train ourselves in cello B and cello C, cello 2 and cello 3. Even just Suzuki melody, if you do that's first position for me in cello 2. It's like here. That's cello 1. Most cellists can do it without even thinking. Now, if I ask you, my students, can you play it in cello 2? You tune it. You tune cello 2 and you play it here. But it's first position. So if I need to go from B to G, easy here. What if I have to go, same, first position to fourth position, however, in cello 2? I find the A. Now, if you can think of a piece, if you find the G, so you can play the swan in cello 2. Why playing it only here? Even the more you do it, the more you take the pieces, which is most of our repertoire, from cello A, you put it in cello B, you realize that it's not difficult. It's just not practiced enough. That's a problem. So not just by practicing popper and hard stuff that makes you go there. The analogy I have, and what I usually share with my students, is Mount Everest. You know, if you divide Mount Everest into 3 camps, Camp A, Camp B, and Camp C. I think there are 4, but for our story we'll have 3. Camp A is the easiest one. Most people, most humans who have tried to climb Everest, they start in A. You spend a few days there, then you go to B. Much less people can get to B. Almost no people go to A, to the top. However, let's say that we could, in a different world, we could take the top of Mount Everest, the Camp C of Mount Everest, and we would put it down on Earth. It would be like on the ground. It will be, I don't know, 100 meters. That's it. But you could breathe easily. You could walk easily, it wouldn't be cold. Wouldn't it be easy to climb there? It wouldn't be hard. Anybody could climb the top of Mount Everest. However, we put it up there. So same on the cello. We are trained from day one that this is camp 1, easy, anybody can play. Camp 2, you need to be quite advanced and you rarely go there. Camp 3, are you crazy? There's like 1 or 2 pieces, we go there. You can breathe there, so you don't spend time there. What if we reverse it? Once you play the cello and you know Camp A really well, you start spending time in Camp B and C much more. Another exercise I do a lot is this. That's actually from a solfege book. If you play it in first position, not really a problem. However, you go to, you tune your second cello, and you do it here. So this Do, this C, is this C. It's first position. I'm not playing now high on the cello, God forbidden. It's first position. If you need more time, you can do it a little slower. Now, if you want to play it in cello 3, which is, of course, highly recommended. My wife is laughing. So the more you do it, your brain starts to realize that when you put the finger, you know the note. You actually know where you are. I myself, sometimes if I'm out of concentration or I'm bored or whatever, you know, any cellist can do. So try once to do it. Find second cello. Find the Mi. It's just an E. E. Sorry for the wolf, but yeah, that's what we do. For the extensions that you ask about, I don't believe in extensions. I don't believe in them in cello 1, cello 2, or cello 3. I believe in supporting. So there is an extension. Let's say you go, I will call it first position cello 2. E flat going to G on D string. So you find the D, E flat, going to G. Now, there's an extension here. If you keep the tension, you create an extension. But what if you don't keep? Who says your first finger should stay there? That's the big mistake. So a lot of people keep the tension. No. Once you reach the note, don't keep the tension, support the finger. If you look at your hand, it's always like a bunch of grapes. You don't do that for more than split of a second, maybe. So if you don't keep, a lot of people say, oh, but I have to break the fingers, but they forget that they're pressing the thumb. You don't need to. You don't need to. So then you don't break the finger on a B flat. Yeah, when you play a B flat here, and you go to D, yeah, or when you play, it's hard because if you keep the extension, you kill your hand. But if you don't, if you snap your finger that you just played to the fingers that you're about to play with and support it, you don't feel any pain or extension. You extend and support. Same here. If you play B flat, I never keep it on the string and I never keep it in where it was before. I always support like a reflex, has to go up to the finger. So I hope this helps, and the cello 1, cello 2 and cello 3 would really help you. There's some Fouillard exercises. So the more time you spend here doing those exercises that are actually written for cello 1, your brain will start think of it as comfortable.
Could you please talk about an ideal balance in the first position? I know this may sound odd to many people, but I am interested in your idea of dinner posture, which is easy to see and feel around the fourth position, and it would be fantastic if you could explain the extension of that idea to the lower position in a more explicit manner.
Great. So first of all, thank you for paying attention to my crazy stuff. But the dinner posture, the main concept of the dinner posture is that when we eat as humans, when we hold the fork and the glass of water or whatever it is, and you eat, that's a comfort zone. There's no argument about it. You don't see people eat like this. You don't see them eat like this or like this. For a split of a second, they might reach out. They might do something, but then they'll come back to what I call dinner posture, which is frog and fourth position. You're right. In the fourth position and frog is the most comfortable position. It's a dinner posture. That's how we eat. However, we do move around the table. We reach out. We hand the butter to a friend. We take the glass, put it back in the cupboard. We do all those things. So, to relate it also to cello 1, 2, 3, I believe that if you start practicing cello 2 more than cello 1, you will realize that playing in low position is actually physically harder than playing in thumb position. I know it sounds shocking to some people, but it is much easier because this is much more comfortable hanging position than this. The solution to keep the dinner posture in low position is to be sensitive to what your body does when you reach out. So holding your glass here and drinking, that's one thing. But then going to first position on A string will be here. And to do that, you need to extend what I call the door hinge, which are your hips. You need to move the door hinge a little bit. If you move the door hinge and you're relaxed, your bow arm will change as well. So if you play a low note on the C string, or the same note on the A string, your body posture should be different in order to keep the dinner posture. What is the dinner posture cellistically? The most important, for me, most important value of it is the hanging feeling of the elbows, and not this, which so many cellists do. So in order to keep the hanging, I need to work around with the entire system. And that's what we do when we eat. I go back to it. You take your glass of water, you put it back in the cupboard. You don't lift your elbow to do it. You adjust your body. So, to your question, if you like to play the best dinner posture note, maybe a B flat. So, when you play Rachmaninoff third movement, you go from comfort to discomfort. So many cellists do this with tension. What I would recommend is to be sensitive. So my door hinge helps a lot to move sideways and up and down. When I go on the D string, it's actually up. I'm making sure that I'm not lifting myself. So that's not dinner option, dinner posture. So my elbows need to be bouncy. In order to get that feeling where my elbow doesn't change angle at all, I need to adjust a lot in my body. I hope that helps.
What is your advice for building up different shades of vibrato, and how do you associate it with looseness or finger contact?
So, of course, the different shades or different colors is all about your poetry as a poet, as a musician, as an artist. So it's the most important tool that the left hand has besides nailing the notes, because we're making sound with the bow. We don't make sound with the left hand. So all we do with the left hand, if you think about it, we walk, we run, and we jump. And the fourth thing we do with it is we decorate. We decorate the sound that we create with the bow. So to get more decoration, you need to be more relaxed in it, so you can change the speed, you can change the amount of meat on the string, and all that stuff can be done only if you relax. So the first thing I ask my students to feel, to get the sensation, is that you can play with a great communication to the string, but not necessarily to the fingerboard. A lot of people think that in order to play a note in tune and well, we need to press it down to the fingerboard. But let me tell you a secret, you can do it without it. So if I play harmonic, G. The difference between the harmonic and the actual note is tiny bit. It's like if you're holding a strawberry and you want to make sure that it's actually good, like we like them to be a little harsh, not really, at least I do, not completely soft. So if you just put a little bit of weight into it, if it's too old, the strawberry, it will be squished, like. But if it's good, you'll feel like, oh, wow, it has resistance, good, I'm going to buy it. Same thing, making sound. When I actually put the finger down, I try to put it not completely down to the fingerboard. That's it, I'm done. Now, to make big sound, you need the bow. But what it allows me is the freedom to move my finger. I don't lock it. Some people lock so hard the finger from top and from bottom with the thumb. That's why I have this strawberry emoji where you just have to feel that you're holding a strawberry at all times. Now, once you hold the strawberry and you feel good about it, it will, first of all, release a lot of tension. Second of all, it will allow you to jump better. What is jump? Jump is a shift. So if you have to jump, if you want to jump easily, don't ever jump by keeping the gravitation on the ground, on the fingerboard. Always make sure that you're lifting it from the fingerboard when you jump. That sensation is crucial also for colors. Because if you want to change the speed and you press down, it will be very hard to do it because it's like a needle stuck to the fingerboard. So, if you want to go slow or faster, it's up to you. This is also related to the pressure on the bow, or the speed and the weight. We'll get into it. But first of all, do an exercise, take a metronome. And as Starke used to say, hit the note from below to the note. So if there's a wall, you try to hit the wall and move your finger up, but you can't. That really helps the intonation also. So you're trying to hit the wall, but you can't move it. So you go to the note. Yeah? And once you have that feeling, that sensation, put a metronome maybe on 60 and do 60 notes. Then do triplets. Then you combine them. Then you go to 80. Or to 90, and I find that if you go to 90 to 100, it's actually, that's a matter of taste. But for me, that's already a beautiful sound. That's about 90. So sometimes in the music we go to 120. I don't, but some people do. So you should be able to do that. Now, finally, to create the color is not only to choose the right blue, is also to choose, should I put water in it? Should I put a thick brush? Should I put a light brush? That's what makes a color. So that's the bow. And that's even more important. So if I play on the same note, look, if I'll play same vibrato, but I'll start heavy and go light with the bow, it's a different sound, not just softer, it's a different. Now, what if I do both? If I decrease the amount of weight and I increase the amount of vibrato. So I make diminuendo in the bow, crescendo in the vibrato. You hear beautiful adjustment at the end. So if you have a note that requires attention because of harmony, you play with the piano. And you want at the end of the note to change the color, you can do it by increasing the vibrato and decreasing the amount of bow. There are other ways, the opposite as well, but this is the direction I would go. First of all, to be familiar with how to hang on the string without pushing it completely down to the fingerboard. So I can jump, I can shift and vibrate in different speeds. And then how to communicate it and to relate it to the amount of weight and speed in the bow.
Thank you for publishing the first hour, which is a great reference book. It seems to be more for advanced students. Those concepts and skills are fundamental for beginners and intermediate students as well. would you consider publishing a version for less advanced cellists?
Yes, so first of all, I heard this question a lot about the first hour book. And if you don't know, I have it here just by coincidence. And this is what I do in the first hour. It has all the emojis that I use. And for me, it's a fun book. But I think what I should do, instead of publish an easier version of the first hour, I should make sure that I train enough disciples, I should say, or cellists that can train people in this method, which is not far from Starker and that kind of concept. The exercises are not difficult. They're difficult to do if you do them wrong. So, for instance, I can give you a few examples. A lot of cellists, not a lot, but cellists come to conservatory sometimes and they're not good enough, they can't play thirds, or they have so much tension. There's a way to play that is really easy. I don't have any other word, it's easy. But you need to be trained to do it well. So if you have good guidance how to put your fingers, and I go even to the first exercise, what I just said about how to put the fingers, how not to press, or how to lift on the way up and to pitch on the way back. If you're trained to do it, or to have your nails facing the bridge so it's easy to move and not like this. If you have this concept of easily just how to walk on the cello, how to walk, how to jump, then those things are not difficult. However, if you play like this or like this and you try to do third, you can't. You're going to hurt your hand, so you don't do it. It looks difficult. So, for instance, one of the exercises. I've seen people do it and really suffer from pain, and they ask me, why do you want me to do it first thing in the morning? It's painful. No, it's not. If you learn not to press the fingers, to have attention to the weaker finger with your arm, to support it, to have only 2 fingers in a double stop on the string, not to have 4, not to break the joints, and mainly not to press the thumb to the cello, it's not hard. I'm not doing anything. I'm just hanging, like you hang on a fence. I hang on the strings. So, or to do thirds. So, all I do with this figuring that I'm using, which is 3 and thumb and 2 and thumb, not 3 and 1 for the thirds, I'm hanging. I'm literally hanging on the cello. To understand the concept, of course, first what I have my students do is to play just the bottom and to vibrate gently. Now, if you do that, that's not hard. You need the right guidance to know how to put your finger, how to shift without pressure, and to have that fingering. Then you do it with the thumb, and then you put them together. I have another thing that I do, which I call the jellyfish walk. So we want to train our hand to be like a jellyfish on the cello. So the same pattern, which is really hard if you just put your fingers and you're tight and you try to play thirds and you do it for 6 hours a day, it doesn't get better and it hurts. You do it in a jellyfish walk, which is I'm leading with the bottom note. Nothing, no pressure. So my answer is that, and I've had students in the past, some of them still want to do it. I'm really happy if they'll do it, where they'll write the same method with the emojis and just with much easier quote-unquote patterns, but I do not think that the patterns are difficult. It shouldn't be difficult to play a fourth, going to a fourth. if you have the right training to do it. Even octaves, when we learn to play octaves. So for years you can play it with pain and you feel it here, but the concept of octaves requires three main things, three main issues. Number one is that the third finger will feel almost like a harmonic. So if you play, you will force your third finger to be up in the air, just touching the string, not the fingerboard. That's huge because many people press it. Number two, you put the weight on the thumb entirely. So harmonic and so if you're able to do it, to play the third just octave, you play just the thumb with weight on the thumb and the third finger tagging along, just touching the string. You're already two of the main elements. The third one is to have your bow in a most relaxed movement. Yeah, so jellyfish again. If you have your bow in a many people play octaves in what I call double stop bow mode, which means this tension. That kills everything in the system. So those three will allow you to do the patterns in the first hour in octaves, which is to feel. It's a different sensation than what most cellists are used to. When you play octave and you press both fingers down, you're doomed for trouble. So, see, I'm almost playing harmonic now. And I'm doing this. So, if you take a piece of paper, you could probably put it under the string now. And I'm playing a high G on the cello. So my answer is that the guidance of how to do the first hour, I think, is much more important than the concept of having easier exercise. Because one day when you will get to do octaves, if it would not be the right way, it will still be difficult, no matter how good you are. So if you do it the right way from age one, from day one, it will be easy. So it's the guidance of how to do it and not so much the difficulty level of it, I think. I think we have time for one more question.
Can you tell us a little bit about your new Schubert recording? How many days did it take and how do you prepare for the high pressure environment of recordings?
Yeah, so the new Schubert recording is really a dream come true. I recorded on the Naxos label the Schubert two cello quintet with the Aviv quartet. They're a wonderful, wonderful string quartet. And the funny story is that the first violinist of Aviv quartet, Sergei Ostrovsky, and I, we were in Israel together in the army string quartet. So for 3 years we played together in a string quartet hundreds of times. Usually Anne Klein and Nachtmusik, but many other things, and very good friends. And since then, for really more than 20 years, we didn't play a note together. But we teach every summer at Keshet Eilon. It's a beautiful, wonderful festival in Israel. And about 3 years ago, I think, already, I approached Sergei because I've been recording for Naxos other things, and they wanted to recreate their 1991 recording of the Schubert Quintet. And I asked Sergei, I said, you know, it would be great if we play together for the first time after the army, and we will do the Schubert Quintet. And he immediately said, yes, let's do it, in a very typical Sergei way. And then we managed to get the recording engineer that both Sergei worked with Aviv Quartet on Naxos, and I worked on many CDs myself, Norbert Kraft, an amazing genius. And we managed to get him and myself, with the dog, with the cello, to Switzerland, where the quartet is based, and they found a beautiful chateau, a beautiful old house on the mountains. Hard to believe now that this was possible. And we basically isolated ourselves for 4 days. It was 2 years ago. One day was just to really rehearse it like crazy, and then to set up everything. And then we had this church, the top of the mountain. It's like a surreal story, musical story. And we indulged in the Schubert from morning to night, and we recorded it And like this, I remember in particular the second movement with a beautiful pizzicato on the second cello, which is the best part for me. We wanted to be inspired to do it, and it's so beautiful, and we figured out that the best way would be if we do it at midnight. So we went, had dinner after we recorded the whole day, and we left that movement and we recorded it at midnight, and I don't know when we ended it, but it was an amazing experience to be isolated like this and to record. And now the CD came out on Naxos, and it's nice because I had enough time to be away from it and to forget the small details and to be able to put the CDs. I did it once in the car, and that's it. I usually don't like to listen to my recordings, but I did it once, and it felt wonderful to hear the piece and to be reminded by the whole process and this really Mount Everest achievement to record. So thank you for asking about it, and I'm kind of proud of that recording. So thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in, and I think that's about it for now. And I hope to be back on Cello Bello, and thank you Cello Bello, Paul Katz, and everybody involved for doing this amazing job for us, the cello community around the world. Take care.